Bed talk number 5. I'm on a streak, ladies and gentlemen. I am on a streak, and when I'm on a streak, you got to just keep going. And so I'm going to keep going. Yesterday, I talked about sharing your story, and I think that's an incredibly powerful thing to do. And if you're still thinking about it and still dabbling around with whether you should or you shouldn't, first of all, take away the word should because that's not about that. Should's a shaming word. But if you're thinking about doing it, do it. Tag me in it. I want to hear your story. One of the other things that I think about when I think about story is the power of sharing someone else's story. And we know this really well because we do this on social media all the time. We find something that we love and we share it with other people. And that's part of the joy of storytelling, is telling somebody else's story or sharing somebody else's story because it's had such a deep impact and it's resonated with you. We know that people remember stories better than they remember data. That's why it's so wildly popular in business. And so there's this incredible thing about sharing other people's stories. And so I had the opportunity to read something yesterday that really, really got to me. And I want to share it with you today. And I'm going to do the what I'm going to guess is probably the first bedtime story. And I'm going to read this to you because it got to me, especially given the light of what's going on in our world today. This story got to me. So, a little bit of bedtime with Alex. Bedtime, let's not say that. Story time with Alex. And I want you to listen to this because I know if I post it, that maybe you'll read it or maybe you won't, but there's something powerful about a human voice reading a story that gets all of us. So hang tight. I'm going to pull it up. And this post is called, and it's written by a good friend of mine, Jeff Tunn. Um, Amazing IT leader, amazing keynote speaker, and amazing author. And I should say more than amazing. I could come up with a better word, but it's early this morning. He's just an incredible person and an incredible writer. So here's the story. It says, I saw my father. I was scrolling through my LinkedIn news feed, as I tend to do several times a day, when I saw a post I can't get out of my mind. I'm not sure what caught my attention first. Probably the image, but with a glance so quick, I didn't comprehend the context other than the man. Then I saw the opening lines. Pale, stale, male privilege at its finest. The sign, not for him. The sign? What sign? Oh, that sign. Now I see it. What yellow and black line? Oh, that yellow and black line. Now I see it. Note, apologies for the blurring of the sign. Whoever posted this was reflected therein. I had to click see more. Pale, stale male privilege at its finest. The sign, not for him. The floor line, not for him. The counter line, also not for him. How else was he going to let the darlings behind the counter know that he had arrived to grace them with his presence while he attended his doctor's appointment? What a good boy. And there's some weird emojis that go with that. It's not like any of those controls he breached were in place for the collective health of the clinic and wider community. Frowny face emoji. His response to my asking if he'd mind stepping back was one of instant rage, such an arrogant request. Apparently, I didn't know he was just letting these lovely ladies know he was here for his appointment. It's time we let this behavior die out and start to ensure that it isn't being instilled into our sons. Fist bump heart emoji. What followed can be best described as a snarky commentary on this man. The comments that followed the post were 13, two in the same tone, because he was standing on the wrong side of the tape. He must feel like he's privileged. Because of the words he used, he must be a misogynist. Because of his reaction when he was confronted, he must be angry. I looked back at the picture. It haunted me. The man in the picture, standing at the counter, speaking with the staff behind the counter, probably oblivious to the sign. In parentheses, I missed it at first glance. Probably oblivious to the line taped on the floor. Parentheses, I hadn't noticed either. After all, he'd been in this office a dozen times before. He doesn't see well, doesn't pay attention to details, probably never saw the tape on the floor. Same reason he lost his driver's license a year or two before. Suddenly, I didn't see some unknown figure. I saw my father. I saw my father as he began to struggle with the onset of dementia. No way Dad sees that sign. No way Dad sees the tape. No way does Dad even comprehend what is happening in our world. And his comments to the staff behind the counter, calling them darlings and lovely ladies. There are many forms of dementia. Not everyone who has dementia has the memory problems of someone with Alzheimer's. Dad had frontotemporal dementia, the behavior variant frontotemporal dementia. This was the Reverend Dr. Tun, the pastor of pastors, the leader of leaders. This was the man who was a champion of the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s. This was the man who stood up for the rights of the LGBTQ community in our churches. This was the man who hired the first female executive minister in the entire denomination, who first put women on equal footing in the church, who promoted women in ministry every chance he had. Yes, this was the man who, at the end of his life, flirted inappropriately with waitresses, nurses, friends, and acquaintances. Why? Because he was a pale, stale male. Why? Because he was a good boy. Why? Because the type of dementia that he had attacks the brain in such a way as to make you lose cognitive ability. It attacks the brain in such a way as to make you lose your social filters. It attacks the brain in such a way to make you lose the ability to effectively process language. At the end, Dad had the cognitive ability of a 5-year-old. His social filters were basically gone. Can you imagine the fear felt as your world closes in around you, as your ability to make sense of things diminishes? You have the memories of an 87-year-old, but you can't comprehend the sign in front of you. And then some stranger points out you are doing something wrong while you have no idea what it is that you are doing wrong. Even though I'm an old white guy, I am a champion for diversity and inclusion. I am an ally. I believe in speaking up. And I don't know the man in the photo, nor do I know the poster, nor was I in the room during the exchange between them. What I do know is that we are all in this COVID-19 reality together. We need to show each other grace and not assume we know someone's motivations, their attitudes, their fears, or their confusion. Let's help each other. Let's support each other. That man is probably someone's father. In a few years, that man could be me or you. Dang. I'm going to leave that right there for you to think about as someone who worked in healthcare for almost 17 years and watched the cognitive decline of so many people in so many ways and know firsthand what dementia does to folks. And just as someone who knows so much about communication and how easily things get misinterpreted and how easily we miss each other in the process of what we think is communication and isn't. I want you to think about that piece. I'm going to drop it in the comments below so you can read it and you can share it. The reminder here today is that we are all human. and that let's give each other the benefit of the doubt and assume best intent before we make judgments about what someone may or may not be doing, or what someone else may or may not be thinking, or how someone else may or may not be acting. Okay, time for some Cheetos and a shower. I'll see you later.